Welcome to the Bible Exegete. Today we're going to have a special day because we're going to do a book review. It's a book review on Dr. David Falk book called The Ark of the Covenant in its Egyptian Context. It's very nicely made, hardcover. It is published by, let me see the print house, by Hendrickson Academic. They're a very respected print house, publishing house. I really admire and appreciate Dr. David Falk's work. He puts out his work in the YouTube community, and that's how I found out about him. I started watching his videos about 2 years ago when he got on YouTube, and ever since I've watched all his videos. Initially, I started watching him for his content, but later I stayed for the laughter. I can't imitate his laughter, so at least for that, you have to give him appreciation. Now, going back to the book, what I can say is that it's a great book because it talks about a very interesting topic, the Ark of the Covenant. We do not know so much stuff about the Ark of the Covenant as we'd want, but we have enough details in the scripture that can make us have an idea about it. It's described in the book of Exodus, and starting from these details, he goes and compares it to the furniture in Egypt. As many of you know, he's an Egyptologist, and so he goes from the Egyptian context to the Ark of the Covenant, trying to compare the details we have about the Ark of the Covenant and the furniture we know about from pictures, descriptions, or we have the pieces of furniture from the New Kingdom period of Egypt. What I can say is that this man knows his furniture. He knows his Egyptian furniture really well. He focuses on furniture, and that topic in itself is not an easy topic. You just have to be very passionate in order to do that. And he is a very passionate person that knows how to present things in an accessible way for laymen. That's another great thing about this book because it's accessible to laymen. Yes, sometimes you might find it difficult, but I'm sure that anyone with a decent logic can read the book and study it. And for this reason, I recommend it to anybody. Buy it. It's a great book. It's got a lot of pictures, about 100 pictures, and it is simply great to find a lot of things about Egypt. Now, I live in Romania, and the book was brought by a friend from the United States all the way to Romania, so it traveled about 5,000 miles to get into my hands. So imagine that if it had to travel that much, I really wanted to read it and study it, and so I did. I basically read it twice and went through it, and I learned a lot of things from it. As I was saying, it's focusing on furniture, especially from the 18th through the 20th dynasty, and it doesn't talk only about furniture, but it talks about sacred furniture. In Egypt, as in other ancient Near East context countries, they also had sacred furniture that they had in their temples, they used to worship their gods, and so on. Dr. David Falk does a good job in showing the connections and convincingly narrows, based on the ark symbols, the date when it could have been produced. And he limits it down from the reign of Amenhotep III, around 1390, all the way to the end of Dynasty 20, around 1070. So, about 300 years. His dating basically excludes the early Exodus date. I personally agree with his conclusions, and in order to see if he's reasoning well or not, I encourage you to buy the book and read it. He is very creative in his writing without leaving academics aside. For example, in the first chapter, he has a creative story of Bezalel's life and tries to show how he got out of the Egyptian context, and then he produced the Ark of the Covenant because he was the mastermind behind the production of the Ark of the Covenant. Dr. David Falk presents, obviously, his personal perspective on the chronology, and he presents Bezalel's life from the perspective of the late Exodus date. But nonetheless, the story is very interesting in how he presents it. And I appreciate that he tries to put together academic accuracy with creativity. It is a imaginative retelling, but it shows his artistic creative side. I learned a great deal about Egyptian furniture and about the Ark of the Covenant. Obviously, I didn't know and I don't know my furniture as well as he does, but just to show you a few things that I learned from the book beyond furniture, one of these things is he mentions that the Ark of the Covenant was covered when it was taken out of the tent of meeting. It makes sense since the covering would imitate the tent itself. And that's one detail I didn't know. Another fun fact is that Bezalel was the grandson of Hur, the man that held Moses' hands when they were fighting the Amalekites. And you find a lot of interesting details like this that tell you that the author knows the scripture really well. There were also questions I didn't find answered to in the book, and I would invite Dr. Falk to consider a live discussion about this great book. Maybe I can ask some of these questions to him personally. I'm sure that he thought of some of them at least, and we can expand the discussion about the book. The pictures in the book are phenomenal. Let me find an example. There are about 100 photos, and most of them were taken personally by him. I know that he went to England, he went to Egypt, he went to France, Germany, I'm not sure about that one, to take photos of the artifacts in the museums or in the places that they are at this moment. And it's incredible because they are very nice, they're very beautiful, and they also give a lot of information when you study them. So instead of just going to Google and trying to find the picture, you just look over the picture right in the book and see from the perspective of the author what he wanted to point out to. So I find that absolutely great. It really helps the reader to see what he is referring to. Obviously, that makes the book much more fun to read, and even my 7-year-old, as he was looking through the book, was simply captured by these amazing photos, and he looked over the book page by page, the whole book, and was impressed all in all by what he saw just by looking at the pictures. So it's a book not just for adults, it can be a good book for kids that could turn them one day, who knows, into Egyptologists. There is one observation I would like to make. On page 11, he has the following quote: "The late Exodus view is not a recent view as it sometimes suggested. The view leverages the chronological work first introduced in late antiquity by Rabbi Hillel Hanassi, AD 344, deriving an Exodus date 1312 BC from Jewish tradition. With the advent of modern Egyptology, C.R. Lepsius, AD 1853, thought that the Exodus pharaoh was Merneptah and that the Exodus occurred in circa 1314 BC, which he determined based upon the Hebrew date correlated with Manetho. Lepsius's approximation turned out to be close to what we have since learned." I want to stop at this quote because I know that Dr. Falk actually knows this. I heard him in a video. The thing with Hebrew chronology is that the Jews had massacred one, basically. They had the Seder Olam Rabbah, which was their Jewish chronology. This book was made in the 2nd century AD. It had some later editions as well and changed just a little bit all the way to the 4th century maybe or so. The thing with this chronology is that it puts the destruction of the temple in 422 BC. Now we know from modern chronology that the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem took place in 586 BC. So there's a difference of about 165 years. Now, the Jews did this because they wanted to make the second destruction of the temple connected with the first in order to make the 70 weeks of Daniel to refer to the two destructions of the temple. So basically from 422 approximately to 70 AD, which is actually 68 more like, you have these 490 years approximately. They played with the numbers here a little. If corrected to modern chronology, the exodus of Hanasi and Lepsius would fall around 1470 BC, which is closer to the early exodus date than the late one. This would be the only observation I would make to the book. Now, I know very well that Dr. Falk, I heard him in a video, knows about these differences in the Seder Olam. So I don't impute it to him. That's just an observation I wanted to make in this review. All in all, I really recommend the book just by the cover. The cover is a very nice cover. It obviously reflects the author's perspective on the chronology, but I think it's a brilliant idea. Look at furniture, and the furniture will teach you more about chronology. We have an important piece of furniture, the most important sacred furniture in all of the Israel, the Ark of the Covenant, and we have it described. So we look at the details in the book of Exodus, and then we look at the descriptions we have from the furniture of ancient Egypt. And obviously the person that made it, Bezalel, coming out of that Egyptian context, would have been influenced by the work he had done in Egypt. So when you compare what you find in Egypt with the Ark of the Covenant, you can see there are connections. Therefore, it's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant book. Buy it. You can find it on Amazon. Like I said, I was willing to make it travel 5,000 miles for me to have it in my hand. So you in the States or somewhere else where you have Amazon, we don't have Amazon in Romania, can have it more easily, enjoy it. You can read it quickly if you want, or just go through it slowly as you're learning more and more from the book. I really appreciate Dr. Falk's work, and I hope more people would appreciate it and enjoy it.